Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Forest Coast Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm joined by Jen Sopchockchai Bankard to discuss the Ahsoka episodes from Tales of the Jedi. If you're a fan of the podcast and would like to consider pledging your support, there will be a link in the episode description for you to check out the various tiers offered. Also, please be sure to check out our T Public store to buy some Forest Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it's time to gather around the campfire for some Forest Ghost Conversations. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Thrilled to continue our Star Wars conversations here as we did do a little bit of a brief interlude talking about Jaws and also World War II properties over the last couple of weeks here. But of course, last week we were back in it with Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy Pieces of the Past. And here we are concluding our look at Tales of the Jedi with the other half that we didn't cover last time, which are the Ahsoka episodes. Now, we did cover the Dooku episodes, and that's in an episode in your podcast feeds a few weeks ago. But here we're here to chat about Ahsoka with Jen Sopchockchai Bankard from the Long Take Review podcast, a wonderful show. So make sure you go check out their podcast feed, as well as in addition to Jen's Substack, which is filled with great insights as well on various different things, including Star Wars and the upcoming and released films that have graced the big screen of late. So this is where I would do the Cloud City Gossip segment, touching upon all the news and happenings of the Lucasfilm and Star Wars adjacent galaxy over the last couple of weeks. However, I did record this episode in advance, and this portion of the episode as well, as I am currently busy doing some other things right now, which are also fun. So, but anyways, because of that, there is no Cloud City Gossip right now. And anything that has taken place in Star Wars or Lucasfilm was the last week will be covered in next week's episode. So be on the lookout for that. Hopefully, no big trailers or anything drops. It's the Mandalorian and Grogu trailer dropped recently, as well as Visions Volume 3 as well. So if you want to hear our insights about those, go check out last week's episode. And of course, full spoilers for Tales of the Jedi and the Ahsoka episodes included within that as well. If you haven't catch those, make sure you go watch them on Disney Plus and then come right back to this podcast before getting spoiled anything of that nature. And with that, let's get into our conversation with Jen on the other side of this break. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Forest Coast Conversations and continuing the Star Wars conversations this week. I know we have to preface that a little bit here because you had a couple weeks of non-Star Wars talk, but we are back into the throes of not World War II, sorry, Star Wars conversation. See, even I was off track here with where we're at here. Star Wars, stay on target, guys. We are here for Star Wars, and we're here to actually finish a thread that I have been hoping to tackle for several years now, and because of this greater gap, if you will, in Star Wars content over the last couple of months here, frankly, since the end of Andor season 2, which also came out at a very much time where there was a lot of Star Wars going on. We've come on the other side of all that stuff here, and now we can finally breathe and tackle some of the other things that are on my whiteboard over here that I talk about a lot. And this is concluding our Tales of the Jedi conversations, and we're here to talk about the Ahsoka episodes. Now, we did talk about the Dooku episodes a few weeks ago, so make sure you go check out that conversation as well. But we're closing out Tales of the Jedi here with Ahsoka. And to talk about the Ahsoka episodes, we've got Jen Sopchockchai Bankard from the Long Take Review podcast back on the show. Jen, how are you doing? And welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Anthony. I'm doing great, especially because I had an excuse to rewatch Tales of the Jedi. So I'm really
That's
excited to
right.
talk about it.
A quick 25, 30-minute foray into some great Ahsoka episodes that really tie into some interesting aspects of the character's background. And I think this will be a great conversation. But before we get into the Ahsoka of it all, let's talk about some recent things that have happened in the Star Wars galaxy, which is the fact that we got a brand new trailer for a movie. We're going back to the cinema, everybody, with Star Wars. Mandalorian and Grogu is hitting theaters in May of 2026. And we actually finally got a publicly released official teaser trailer, I suppose they're probably calling it. And it is compiled of a little bit of the footage that was unveiled last year at both D23, Star Wars Celebration, and Destination D23 a couple weeks ago. and with some new footage now too. So, did you get a glimpse of any of that pre-released footage? Maybe as you were doing Star Wars Celebration from home, you maybe caught a glimpse of of a leaked video or something like that, or maybe you got a synopsis about that, and now you got the full thing. What are your thoughts on this new trailer coming out?
So I was good. I tend to draw the line at leaked footage. So I'm happy to
Okay,
consume anything and everything that is considered, legal and above board. But if something's leaked on the internet, I tend to try to avoid it because I'm like, well, they don't want me to see that. So I'm gonna, play along with the curated experience that has been designed for me. But I have seen the trailer. I will say the timing of this trailer is a little suspicious. It
it
does
is. I
feel a
agree.
lot like when my kids are having a meltdown and I say, "Hey, here's this like shiny new toy. Like, let's maybe you'll stop crying."
Yeah, who
It feels
wants
very much like that.
McDonald's?
Right,
There's a drive-through
exactly.
right over here.
Who wants ice cream? Yeah. Don't pay no attention to the thing that made you upset 2 seconds ago. But that aside, I was still I'm a human and I'm a Star Wars fan. I was still very excited to see this trailer. And I think the thing that struck me the most is that the way the trailer is cut really seems to be emphasizing that this is a fun adventure. It is
Mhm.
not, and part of that is like down to every little detail, like the font of the title seems very pulpy in kind of like a very throwback George Lucas kind of way.
Yes.
But I think there's more humor in this trailer than I would have maybe expected, and and the bit with Sigourney Weaver and Grogu and fighting over the snack. I was like, this is classic, and I love it. so so in general,
Mhm.
I was like optimistic because it's like, oh, this movie is not ashamed or afraid to be like, hey, just come on a fun adventure with Mando and Grogu.
Yeah, I think, you and I both kinda read the tea leaves about things about, like, its kinda release. Maybe the powers that be were like, "Hey, we're kinda under flack with, recent events, and, hey, look at this thing over here." And some people saw through that, I think, and, some things have also changed in the world, since the release of that trailer, so, maybe we're back on track, so to speak, with that, because it does, uh so I was at Destination D23 where they did a full, Lucasfilm and Disney showcase panel for the studio, and they revealed a lot of new trailers and footage for various things, but they did re-show the same Mandalorian and Grogu trailer that was shown at Star Wars Celebration, at that, and this is only 2 weeks later that this new trailer comes out, and a part of me is like, "Why wouldn't you have just released it then when you knew that there was this marquee event for Disney fans and Lucasfilm fans in a room to then unleash it to the rest of the world and then have that big hurrah moment of that kinda deal, rather than waiting towards, like, what, a random Tuesday to then or Monday, Tuesday to then just kinda drop it and go, 'Oh, hey, there's that thing,' amidst the the turmoil of everything else going on." Um, it's interesting, but I do have a second question because I know with the long take review, you're always focused on maybe the larger picture, perhaps, when it comes to the box office and the cinema of it all, right? And I think there's been a consistent criticism, maybe not criticism, but it's a point of conversation for people when they're talking about this trailer, or at least online that I've seen, that they're just saying, "Oh, it's just another. It feels like just another episode of The Mandalorian, right? Maybe just a season 4." And now they're asking me to go to the movie theater for it. Do you think that first off, I guess the first question is, do you think that there was any jump in quality from the TV show to this trailer that we're now seeing? And beyond that, do you think that if there is a perceived lack of quality, will that perhaps make people less likely to go to the movie theater and instead just say, "Hey, there's nothing for me in this that I wouldn't expect to see on my TV at home. I'm just going to wait until it comes out on Disney Plus in say 3 months."
So I think if anyone's saying that that's going to happen, that people are just going to stay home when this comes out, I feel like we're not being honest with ourselves about how much we love Grogu as a culture. Um, but I
Yes,
think
he's on the
in
poster
terms,
3 times if you didn't
I
see
know,
that.
right? And he's in every scene in this trailer. So if we're thinking about the bigger picture of like the health of the movie industry, box office, Lucasfilm, all that sort of stuff, I do think that this discourse around this movie is not ideal because
Mhm. Mhm.
it's been a minute since Star Wars has been in the theater. They purposely, I think, are waiting to make sure that when it does return to theaters, people are like, ah, yes, Star Wars belongs in the theater. Star Wars is back, and that it really has an impact, right? It's worth the wait. And so I
Yeah.
do think that if what people are thinking is true, and part of this I think is the rumors that the next season 4 of The Mandalorian kind of became this movie. I don't
Mhm.
think we have any facts to confirm that or deny it necessarily, but that's the rumor. And I think if people after they see this movie in theaters feel that way, that's not good. um,
Mhm. Mhm.
but based on this trailer, I am again more optimistic because it does seem like, even though, like I said, it's very playful and is like really trading on the humor and fun adventure, I do think that it is making an effort to show us that it's trying to also be cinematic. And in
Yeah.
particular, that last shot of the AT-ATs and one falls off the cliff. I've heard
Yeah.
people, one of my favorite movie podcasts, The Big Picture, disappointed me because they were like really making fun of the CGI in that and stuff. And like why, back in the day that used to be a practical effect. Sure. But
Oh, come
that
on. This
but
that's not Favreau's not the audience to be complaining about practical versus
no, it's
CG,
true.
right?
Yeah.
Especially with have they seen The Mandalorian? Like, so much of it is practical. I mean, okay, I
Yeah.
digress. Continue.
Anyway, so yeah, don't go listen to that episode, I guess. Listen to other episodes of that show. But I do think that, to me, including that scene in this trailer was supposed to be a signal to all of us to be like, no, no, the scope of, even if it's a fun adventure with Mando and Grogu, characters you love and know from a
Mhm.
TV show, this is a cinematic experience. Like we're trying to make this a bigger, like the scope and scale more like
Yeah.
befitting of the big screen. And so whether or not that holds becomes turns out to be true, I think is entirely different. Trailers often have misled us, but
That's all, yeah.
um based, if I'm just going by what's in the trailer, that's kind of what I would say.
Well, and they also have roughly, what, 8 months to do post-production work on this thing, so if you think the CG looks a little wonky now, then, like, they got a lot of time to fix
Yeah.
it in between then, and I can assure you that they are not, like, not doing any work over at, various ILM branches of Lucasfilm across the globe. They're working almost around the clock because I know they have, like, a Singapore office, I think they have one in Vancouver and at least San Francisco too, right? So they're very much anywhere the sun is right now, they're up and working on this project. So I, I'm excited for this. I can't wait to see it again. It'll be fun to see a new Star Wars and to see how they take the because that's always been, I guess, a question that I've had over the years is like, all right, we have these every company has their own streaming platform now, whether it be Peacock with Universal, HBO Max, Warner Brothers, etc. And few of them have really taken that leap of let's take a character that was made for one of these shows or streaming platforms, etc., and then taking it to the big screen. We've seen it the other way, where they've taken a character and then used that IP to make a TV show based off of it. But very rarely do we see that. I think the biggest swing was perhaps the Marvels, and I think for a variety of reasons, not just the maybe the quote unquote unknown characters or the homework of it all, caused that film to not do as stellar in the box office they anticipated. But with Avengers Doomsday coming around the corner, who knows if that'll rechange some of those narratives around some of those films. But this is really, like, I would argue one of the first times if that they've taken this bigger leap of like, hey, this was an unknown that we created, and let's see how this works here. Very excited to see how they do with this thing, and I think it'll be important for box office tracking too. Because if this is successful, who's to say other companies won't take the same initiative and say, okay, let's try and move this character over to the big screen and see how that works out. I think that'll be really interesting too. And also, I just want to make a plug here that I think the criticism that it looks like the TV show is just a compliment for the TV show in some ways, right? Because if the TV show is looking that good, I think that was a big concern that everyone had when Disney Plus launched, and they said, okay, we're gonna have Marvel on here, we're gonna have Star Wars, live action Star Wars, and I think there was a lot of concern with people. They're like, "Oh, is it gonna look good? Is it gonna look like a Star Wars? Am I gonna believe that I'm in a galaxy far, far away? And you can have all the criticisms that you want about the volume and the sky size and scope that it offers and whatnot, but honestly, for the most part, it is a cinematic experience watching something, uh, anything that they produced in the various shows over the years, and the volume has only continued to have gotten better and better and better. We know they're using the volume for this thing too, so, uh, it's interesting that maybe there's another part of the conversation there, which is, because TV shows have gotten so cinematic over the years that maybe people don't see the cinema as this big leap anymore in quality, right? Where versus the 2007 narrative where you had 24 TV shows in a or episodes in a season, and it was like Doctor Who level quality of CG for those things, or the action was just so much cut together that you're like, I can't even understand what's going on here. And then you would see like a Transformers in the cinema, for example, and that would be like CGI looks great, the action sequences are awesome. You're in this theater having this experience with people, and that's kind of been blended now into an at-home experience that any TV show looks like it could be on a big screen nowadays and be good. So there's a lot of conversation around this thing, but it'll be exciting once May comes around to see if those discussions shift or um, the movie just blows us all away and we're able to just like bask in the fact that we have another Star Wars again. Be really interesting. So keep an eye on that one, folks. And let's get into our Ahsoka conversation here. We now have 3 iterations of these quote unquote Tales series, with Tales of the Jedi being the first installment. Now, g going back, I guess, or since the 3 years now have passed that we've had these types of installments now, do you like the format of adding more stories to the Star Wars galaxy through this means?
I really do. And I think part of it is because these shorts are shading in little pockets of the galaxy that
Mhm.
probably would never have gotten a chance otherwise. You know what I mean? Like the they to me they haven't been enough to warrant their own series, but they're perfect for kind of the scope and scale of these series of shorts. And
Yeah.
the other thing too is I really love how they've structured the sets of them together, like the fact that we have 2
Mm.
sets of 3. And, the film theorist Eisenstein, his big theory is, the theory of montage and the third meaning, and the idea is, like, if you juxtapose 2 like, the part of the symbolic power of film is if you juxtapose 2 things together, it creates a third meaning by placing 2 different shots or scenes together. He was mostly talking about, film editing, but I think the same kind of concept holds true with these. To me, it's not just watching each individual episode, it's watching them as kind of a little mini anthology and then thinking
Mm.
about the stories and how they contrast each other, how the characters are kind of 2 sides to the same coin in some cases. And so I
Yeah.
think it's just like a really rich text the way that they've set it up. They could have just done these shorts by themselves as like one-off releases or as weekly or monthly releases, like just on their own, but the fact that they come out as like a set, I think is really cool.
Yeah. I agree, and, I like that kind of how they've been like a yin and yang so far with the 3 of these across the last couple of years here, and particularly with this one, right, the Ahsoka and Dooku nature of it all, opposing people on the battlefield many a time, but ultimately former Jedi, right? They both left because either saw the corruption going on within or they faced discrimination, both, I think, to a degree, right? And one left to kind of just be a Ronin and kind of do good in the way that she felt was right, and then Dooku thought he was doing right by being ultimately very evil, but also being seduced by the greatest dark side power in the world. But they're also connected through the through line of Anakin in between them, which is it's very interesting. And I'm glad that you were saying like this is a great way to tell these stories in such a way that maybe wouldn't have been given the time of day, right? You just can't do this kind of storytelling in a Clone Wars episode. You would get this over the course of several episodes over seasons. And it's very fast, right? It's fast editing. They're at most 15 minutes in an episode, so it's quick. It's to the point. You're in and out. Like there's no space for nothing that's not useful to the story. And I think that is refreshing in this day and age, right? Going back to even our last conversation here, where it's like, okay, there's so many things on streaming platforms now, and the quality is varying degrees based off of your interests when it comes to this stuff. But I think there's a big conversation now of, like, does it really warrant 8 episodes, right? That's the thing now, right? Did they need to do all this in 8 episodes versus, like, in 2006, you got 22 episodes throughout the school year, and you had to have something to watch every Wednesday night. But now that our viewing platforms and situations have shifted now, I think people are a bit more of like, just give me the nuts and bolts of what I need here and do it in a good way that's really efficient. And this is a really efficient storytelling, I think, across the board here, particularly with some of these Ahsoka episodes here. It gets really to the heart of what this character is, and it just shows the um, yeah, it highlights a lot of these characters that maybe we wouldn't have kinda, like, I'm thinking like, Morgan Elsbeth, right? A character created in the Ahsoka show, or well, technically Mandalorian, but it's very much in the forefront of Ahsoka, and we get a little bit more of her backstory, right? All these characters that are just ancillarily that have become very much fan favorites in the Star Wars, fandom that, get their day in the sun, and I think that's great versus um, they don't need to carry the weight of an entire season of a TV show on their back. Uh, Disney, it's a safer bet, right? And it feeds a content machine that needs to have something given to it every so often, as we were also mentioning earlier, uh, as they are starting to slow down on the content created for these streaming platforms. And the animation, though, seems to be the way that they are continually pumping some new, fresh life into these. So we'll probably see more tales of in the future, and maybe we'll have a question about that later on in this conversation here. But we're here to chat about the Ahsoka episodes for Tales of the Jedi. And yes, there are 3, but the first one showcases a baby Ahsoka with her mother Pavti. Why do you think it was important to introduce the audience to Ahsoka's real parents?
I think you can look at this answering this question from two different angles. One is from the how is this kind of building the lore of the Jedi uh, angle, and I think we've seen this elsewhere. In particular, I think of in the live action series Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's a scene where he's talking to young Leia and sort of talks about, like, maybe for the first time ever, his childhood or what he remembers, like flashes of memories of a brother that he might have had, right?
Hey,
And
he had a
so
brother. That's right.
and so to me, I think, this, more recent Star Wars has kind of tried to pepper in this idea of addressing that Jedi recruit from babies. They take babies from families.
Hmm.
And I think for Ahsoka in particular, this is significant because, a big part of her identity is her as a child soldier, right? Like that she was raised
Yeah.
basically as a soldier, as a commander in the Clone Wars. And I do think that her lack of parents, it can be like her, like you could argue is one of her most defining features in that way. But I think to kind of have this episode that shows us her biological parents and not her adopted family, I think, of the Jedi Order, right? Like, is really powerful because it's like, oh, first you kind of understand what she grew up without, right? Like kind of what could have
Hmm.
been had she not joined the Jedi Order. But it's also, I think, if we think about how what we see in this short defines her still, right, as a character, I think so much of what we see in this episode you can kind of trace to her, like sort of fundamental personality and kind of character traits.
Mm.
Like her especially her relationship with the Force, right? Like she
Yeah.
is, like the fact that as a baby she's able to tame this like saber-toothed tiger creature, which I don't remember if we ever found out what the name of that is.
I don't
Someone
think
please
so
tell
either.
me, 'cause
Yeah.
okay, like,
It's on
um,
Wikipedia, I bet. Someone's tracked it
probably,
down.
yeah. I should have looked up all those names because I remember thinking like there are all these new creatures introduced in this like 5 minutes, and I need plushies of all of them, and I need to know all their names, right? Um, uh but I think that her being so attuned to nature, I think one thing that sets her apart from other Jedi potentially is she has through the Clone Wars this long history of kind of cosmic connection, right? The world
Mhm.
between worlds, the daughter Mirai, right? Like, and so to me it just all made sense. Like it was like, oh, like this is her, really is her origin story, even though she's a baby and even though we never see these parents again in other stories. um and yeah, so there's like, yeah, and just seeing where she grew up is also really fun. Because I feel like Togruta not necessarily represented a lot in terms of, like, I before watching this episode I couldn't tell you anything about their culture or anything. So
I mean, we that's you could say that across the board, right? How many really cultures do we get to dive into that aren't Mandalorian in Star Wars? We know a lot about them, but very little about just generally the other cultures, right? We're Erodian, we don't know what what really they do over there, and even the Gungans, right? For a species that we are kind of should be really familiar with, I feel like we still don't know a lot about them. Um, I agree entirely. I think this is a great way to showcase the alternative, right? What this is almost like a glimpse into what if Ahsoka had never had Force abilities, right? And this is the family and community that she got to know instead, and they seem very loving and compassionate and caring. And you can argue the Jedi were to some degree until ultimately they sided against her, and then we're like, "Hey, come back. We made a mistake." And then she's like, "But none of you really stuck up for me when push came to shove. None of you believed that I could be right. You assumed I was guilty instead of innocent until proven otherwise, right? You had already made your choices up in your head here, which then forces you makes her pushes towards that decision to ultimately leave the Jedi Order. And again, it does showcase that she does have these strong force abilities. I think empathy is really there, how she's able to connect with various creatures in this village, forest hunting ground, if you will. That then she's able to translate that to the grander adventures that she faces. And this is interesting because I believe it's not necessarily showcased in this episode, but I believe in the Clone Wars when Plo Koon goes and they kind of do a flashback sequence, it's celebrated that Ahsoka, this is a community that celebrates when a member of their own gets inducted into the Jedi Order, or at least gets, the opportunity to train with them. Um, versus like the versus the reality, I guess, that is the choice is taken away from children, right? The Jedi come, and if you're in the Republic zone, there's no you're taken. You don't know this family that you have. Maybe you have glimpses because if your memory's a little better at various times, you're in the clear there. But for the most part, you're taken away without your consent or choice from a family that you were, that's your blood family, right? So it does portray that other side of things too, and it's nice to see that, like, she had very much a loving set of parents, and her mom was kicking butt, like, "Pop T, mom of the year," and all that stuff too, and, uh, I think this is just a really great way to introduce us to a character and show us another set of, background that we would have never gotten otherwise if it wasn't for this, right? This isn't just like we were saying, this isn't just an episode you just throw into Clone Wars randomly that really throws everything out of confusion there because, right, why would we need to know about her story and whatnot? But this does give us great insight into this character's upbringing and just the surrounding culture that she would have become a part of. Now,
I
as an aside, like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I really like that you brought up her leaving the Jedi Order because to me one of the defining characteristics of Ahsoka is her sort of her open-mindedness and elasticity surrounding norms and preconceived notions, right? And because, I don't think any Jedi in her position would have had the strength and the
Hmm.
wherewithal to be like, "No, this institution I've known my whole life, uh, is, not for me and I need to leave." Most people wouldn't be brave enough to do that, I think. And I
Yeah.
think we even see in this episode as a baby that she not only doesn't show fear towards the tiger, but she, like, doesn't assume it wants to eat her, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like she
Yeah.
has kind of this, like, lack of again, like lack of bias sort of, or like a open-mindedness where she's just like, "Oh, like, let's just see if we can connect," right? As opposed to kind of acting out of fear. So yeah, it's like it all started when she was just a little baby.
Now that you said that, this is getting me thinking a little bit about how it could potentially, if you want to think about it from a certain point of view, tie it to a great lesson from the Ahsoka show, which was being worked on roughly at the same time that this was coming out, right? I think people either missed the point or struggled to really think through the reasoning of like that whole Anakin World Between Worlds, if you will, sequence that happened, where um, there's the common question of like, well, what's the point of all this? Am I just like destined to fight for the entirety of my life. Like, what is the point of all this? I guess is the major question that she's grappling with at that point. Um, and Anakin's like, "You live or die," right? Like, that's I hate to break it to you, but this is the world we live in, and make your choice, right? This is and that's Anakin's harsh brashness, perhaps, but that's the world he was preparing her for, and that's the realistic world that's out there, and even in the world we live in beyond the Star Wars in the real world, right? That's very much a world we live in, um, and this showcases even from birth, right? You walk out into the world, you go hunting, right, with your mom, you're automatically put into a situation now of life and death, right? The safety and comforts of your home and community kind of go out the window once you leave that safe space. And I think maybe they were setting us up for a little bit of that here too, because um, this is like you were saying, the power of Ahsoka is the ability to be non-judgmental, to see through, to think through the larger picture, perhaps. And maybe in that sequence, when Ahsoka is kind of beaten down after years of going through all this and the jadedness with things and the struggles with training Sabine and whatnot, and feeling like a failure in that front, when she comes through the other side of that, then she's able to connect with the Purgle, who then eat her in a way, but but don't actually like bite down, right? They provide safe passage, but it's that connection that she has with them, similar to how they're able to connect through the Force to this like tiger type creature in this forest here, that then leads to a mutually beneficial relationship for all of them, right? Everyone gets to go away their separate ways, and like, hey, no harm, no foul. um, I feel like they might have been onto something here with this, and started to lay the seeds for perhaps something that might be coming up later. So, folks, go rewatch that Ahsoka episode. I think it was season 1, episode 5. I don't know. Just
Hmm.
search for the one that
Yep.
Anakin's in, and you'll find it. um, but as an aside, in your head canon, Jen, do you believe that perhaps maybe teenage Ahsoka sought out this family and this community once the fall of the Jedi happened? Do you think that's possible?
Well, I'd like to think that's possible, but I do feel like the evidence that's been presented to us indicates no, because all of the stories we've gotten so far during this period are of her in hiding and trying to
Mhm.
conceal her identity and adopt a new identity as much as possible, right? And part of that's very
Yeah.
practical, right? Because she's on the run. All the Jedi are enemies of the Empire. So, but there's nothing that implies that she would set out to do that, at least during this time. That after the fall of the Empire, I think that's a different story. I think
Mhm.
when she would, because I think she also is very conscientious of not putting others in danger.
True.
Um,
It's true. She learns that lesson hard.
so yeah, so I'm gonna say the evidence points to no, but I would love that for her. I think that would be great.
Yeah.
I would watch the shorts of that.
Would it be a nice, like, little, like, Life Day special? Perhaps, right? Reuniting with Pop T and Dad? That'd be cool. But like you were saying, it's probably, realistically unrealistic that she would have done such a thing to put them in harm's way potentially, right? Because in the 3rd episode, we'll see that they find out that she has force abilities, and then an inquisitor comes by and burns the village, and doesn't end well for seemingly for a lot of people, whether it be through loss of community and home, or even who knows what that inquisitor was doing going around beforehand. Um, yeah, probably
Maybe
on the
she
safer side.
uses, if I'm going with headcanon, maybe she uses the world between worlds to just dip in and just like
Mm.
see them, but not do the um not mess with the timeline. Like she won't interfere with.
She's staring from afar.
Yeah.
She's like a when she becomes a force ghost one day and she can travel through time and space, she'll just appear at various points in her family's life and go, "Huh, what could have been?" Um, Great. Well, the 2nd episode then highlights the training that Anakin provides to Ahsoka, and this training, though, is ultimately what will save her during Order 66 that we see at the end of Clone Wars now. So, in your opinion, though, is this instance just like a cool detail for fans to like connect the dots to, or is there a deeper meaning here?
No, it can't just be a cool detail. Come on. So we at least at the long take review like over analyzing things. So I'm never gonna answer that way.
Bring
But
the
I
academic perspective. Do it.
so first of all, there's a very like there's just pure pathos, I think, when I watch this episode because
Okay.
of the connection to the Siege of Mandalore and Order 66, right? Like I think just there's just like a very like a visceral kind of like emotional reaction that I have to it.
Hmm.
But I think if I think about it from a more intellectual perspective, it really is a kind of key stepping stone in understanding the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka across time. Like, because I think a big part of
Yeah.
her narrative is having to cope with the fact that he fell to the dark side and became Darth Vader, right? And
Hmm.
I think I off when I watched this episode, I not only obviously because the obvious thing you think of is the Clone Wars, but the thing I also think of is that moment in the Ahsoka series when she's watching one of the holograms of that Anakin left her, like a training hologram, and she kind of sighs and says, he was a good master, right? So this idea that like she's over time having to come to terms with the fact that just because her former master became Darth Vader doesn't negate all of the goodness that they had as a master and a Padawan, right? So to
Yeah.
me, that's really what this shows, is that because I think it's so powerful because you see, he had a very specific way in which he cared about her, and it manifested in very specific ways that in the moment she maybe kind of didn't appreciate. but but that he really did care about her, right? And that the bond between them was real and it was good and pure, even despite what happens after.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, this showcases how like mentors want the best for us, even though we may not see it in the moment. That we are what they grow beyond, right? That's true burden of all masters, as Yoda will say. But in this case specifically, right, this is Anakin being like, I know you can do better, and the world is going to demand more of you eventually one day. So like you coasting through these training exercises isn't doing good for anybody here. Like if your ability can outmatch this, then why aren't you trying harder and pushing yourself and testing your limits? And ultimately, like whether she saw through the real wisdom of that or not at that time, right? I mean, it feels like he's doing to her what he wishes Obi-Wan would have done to him a little bit. I think that's a little bit of like, okay, learning from my master's mistakes and trying to do better in this case for you, and then ultimately it saves her life, which then allows her to continue doing good things in the galaxy that will ultimately undermine him and his work and efforts as a dark side agent, to then kind of lead to his transformation back into being a good person if you like add on all the dots across the way here, which is an interesting kind of through line to some degree, but it's also like you were saying an interesting thing of the her grappling with the realization like, "Okay, my master was Vader. What does that make me? Am like, I learned from you all of what you had is now mine. How do I grapple with this kind of thought and notion?" Again, it goes back to that Ahsoka episode of, kind of rationalizing that and then realizing that Anakin is both good and bad, and we're all good and bad, and it's our choices ultimately that decide who we are as people, and that's an accepting fact that we have to all choose at the end of the day. So I think that's all kind of at full display here. So it's I think more than just a fun Easter egg of being like, "Hey, cool Leo meme of, hey, I've seen that before,"
Right.
and how it does really tie into that great episode that closes out the Clone War. No, does it happen slightly before, or is it that last episode? I can't remember exactly. I'm trying to think. Is it the third episode where she has like that spinning sequence with on the table there that she
Oh,
does that?
oh,
It doesn't matter. It's in the
I
same
think
arc.
so.
So ultimately, who watches just one episode of that and doesn't just
Right,
watch the
that's what I
full
say. I'm like,
entirety
to me,
of
it's
it?
all one thing.
Like when I
um,
watched it with my wife the first time, I was like, "Hey, like like we just if we're starting this, we're watching all four, right? We're not just cutting out in the
it's a
middle
package
here. This
deal.
is like a mini movie here." And they did show it at Celebration a few years ago, which was a great treat
Yes,
for all those in attendance.
I did go see that. It was great. It was,
Ah, lucky duck.
yeah, yeah. Um, what you're saying reminds me again of that pivotal episode in the live action Ahsoka series where he said Anakin says you either live or you die, like that's the choice. And to me, because a lot of people have asked me, well, what did he actually mean when he said has like what like people find that kind of too obtuse that like what did he mean when he said that like sure
That's
she's
Anakin.
fighting for her life, right? But to me, based on the flashbacks in that episode and what we know about the relationship, it really is like, okay, if you choose to live, that means choosing to accept your mistakes. And I think that
Yes.
includes both hers and his, right? So it's like it's all
Yeah,
part of one big
absolutely.
kind of like, yeah. Um, so yeah, to me, when I think back to this episode of Tales of the Jedi, when uh the it does like he Anakin gives off a little bit of J.K. Simmons and Whiplash energy, like like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
do it
Not
again,
quite my
do it
tempo.
again.
Yep.
Yeah. Um but at the same time it like he basically in that episode teaches her to get what it means to get back up again, right? And to accept
Yeah, she's
I
stagnant,
you know,
right?
yeah,
She's just floating along, and he's
right.
like, "Get back up. Come on, you can do it."
Right.
The
And that's
push
essentially
needed.
what he's doing in episode 5 of Ahsoka as well, right? The like
Yeah.
he's teaching her how to get back up.
Oh, it's almost like there's a through line of people working on this that were, like, teasing us to what could
Right.
potentially come later on. And maybe if more people had seen, these Ahsoka Tales of the Jedi episodes, beforehand, then they would have connected the dots a little bit more on that one, instead of just being like, "I don't really get this. Episode is bad." Kinda commentary that I saw in the immediate aftermath, but I
I just tune
digress.
all that out, Anthony. That's
As and that is also a good thing too. Yep, just tune out the bad. Especially the one that is like, of not good, in bad faith commentary where
sure.
like, "You just
Yep.
wanted to hate this. You didn't even care. You just found something where like, this isn't good. Women is lead role and therefore bad." And like, "Okay, well, okay, go away." Um, Anywho, back to Ahsoka, Tales of the Jedi here. The 3rd episode features a post-Order 66, world where Ahsoka engages in a climactic fight against an Inquisitor for survival. Now, if my memory serves me correct here, though, this fight does also take place in E.K. Johnston's Ahsoka novel, which came out, I think, in like 2016, 17, somewhere in that range. However, it is presented slightly different in Tales of the Jedi versus the book. Now, for the grander canon conversation, which version is the more quote unquote accurate for what happened in Star Wars? And I guess another follow up question would be then, how does it make you feel when there are multiple perspectives, and varying accounts of what transpires in the Star Wars galaxy for the same event?
So I'm gonna begin by coming clean. I have never actually read the entirety of the Ahsoka
Oh,
novel. It came out
Jen.
You're reminding me why, because it came out around when my daughter was born. My daughter was born
Oh,
in
that'll do it.
2016. And then I
That'll
just
do it.
never managed to catch up with the rest of it since. Like I tried. And so yeah, so that's really hard for me to admit because I'm like a Ahsoka super fan. And so it's a big gaping hole
It's like,
in
I
my
see the
yeah.
post, the picture back in your
I know.
background
It's
there,
like,
like, I
no, there's a
yeah.
whole shelf. There's a whole shelf here of all Ahsoka stuff. I'll show you when we're done. Like it's like um but anyway, so my point is that like my ability to speak to this in specific terms is pretty limited. But I do remember that this was a really big deal when the Tales of the Jedi came out and there was a lot of outcry, a lot of discourse about why would they make this so different? Why would they exclude? I believe there's like a specific character that
Mhm.
isn't named
Yep,
in that's a queer character, right? And this is from what I
I think
remember, this is
so, yeah.
around the time when I mean, like this is one of those periods where, and and we even see now Disney is not immune to political pressure. One way
Sure.
or the other. So I feel like there's a lot of that kind of stuff that's wrapped into how people think about this versus the novel in a way that like is very well, I think, very justified, but also kind of just like puts a damper on on enjoying
It sure
the
does, yeah.
episode itself. To me, I think like the change in general, I think was probably inevitable just, and again, this is very broadly speaking, but just because of the nature of the length of the story, right? The fact that this is a
Hmm.
short and the novel is a novel, I think
Sure.
the scale of the story and kind of the duration of it, I think necessitated probably some kind of change. Whether or not all the changes that are made are justified, right, is like another thing that you have to kind of break down case by case, probably.
Got it.
Um, uh, but yeah, to me, it is tough because it does, like, they must have made it knowing that this was going to cause a canon rift.
You
But
have to think they did.
this is also not the first time that's happened, right? I think like
Nope. Nor the last.
um yeah, like Asajj Ventress kind of comes to mind with like people
I'll tell you
getting
another just off the top of my head, the
yeah.
Kanan and Bad Batch.
Yes,
Like
yeah,
that Order 66 thing a little contradicts the Kanan comic that came out in 2015 as well. So yeah. Also in the same novel, they also talk about the Siege of Mandalore a little bit too, and that plays out differently than what eventually would happen
right.
in the Clone Wars season 7.
And I'm gonna invoke my frequent co-host and friend Greg, and our mutual friend Greg of Ion Canon. He always kind of says, look, the order, the hierarchy of canonicity is that the the novels and the comics are canon until a big
Well, something
screen
contradicts them. Yeah.
or something cinematic, or I don't know what the right word is now. It's like totally escaping me. So something in, because it's like I want to say it both live action and animation. Something on the
Hmm.
screen
Sure.
uh
I think that both applies. Yeah.
conflicts, right? And I think, I think if you don't like that idea and want, like, as people who love reading the novels and the comics, I think, are very justified in not appreciating that
Hmm.
chain of that like food chain necessarily. But I think that's just kind of, that's how it is right now. And I
Yeah.
think that, to me, that's kind of how I reconcile it, is just like, oh well, this was true until they made this, and now this is true.
Yeah. I mean,
But what do
it's
you think
interesting.
about this? Because I gave a pretty inadequate answer because it's incomplete.
No,
But
I actually think you gave a great answer. But I will say this is something I constantly in moral quandary with myself about, right? Because there's a part of me that's like, why even touch it if someone has already kind of like put their stamp on it? So like, you know, why choose to create a controversy if you're not going to honor it exactly the way that it is presented there? And then the other half of me is like, well, if they really want to tell a story, why are they shoehorning themselves into something that was written 10 years ago that maybe not everyone has seen? And we can hash out the details ultimately like in between there. So my brain will settle in the middle in some way and kind of like start to think through, okay, well, who's the narrator here? Like, what what is the narrator of Star Wars? Is there an unreliable narrator that like I should take everything slightly with a grain of salt? That like, is there 100% everything accurate to the way that it came out? Like, they say at the beginning, it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away for just about every one of these properties, which automatically tells me that someone is telling me a story of what happened a long time ago, in between what actually happened and how they're telling it to me, whether it be through a book or a TV show, a comic, is it's gone through. It's the game of password, right? How many times do they get told that it's shifted over time, that maybe slight details here and there don't exactly match up, right? And ultimately, I land on it that, do I love how it portrays in the Ahsoka novel? Absolutely. I think that's one of the best Star Wars stories outside of like the films and television. Yeah, I think it's great. Does it take away my enjoyment of that? No. Do I also watch this and enjoy that and fit into the context of the story being provided? Also, yes. And in reality, what's the outcome, right? Is it that Ahsoka defeats an Inquisitor and then walks away and chooses to become, Fulcrum? That happens the exact same way. Now, minor details, I don't, and again, I don't want to say minor in the sense of like removing, especially, underrepresented characters and whatnot to be um, a minor thing. Like those are major things, and representation is very important. So that's a conversation I think is a separate thing. But ultimately, the the what happens is the big picture thing of like Ahsoka defeats Inquisitor happens in both, and that's what happens, right? I think there's a similar kind of instance of the Han shooting first kind of thing that has happened in the last 30 years, as people have kind of, like, complained about this. There have been other stories that have basically said like, "Oh, they shoot at the same time." Oh, and it's like who's telling it? If someone at the other end of Chalmun's Cantina saw it one way, someone saw it a different way. Ultimately, Greedo's dead. That's all that matters at the end of things. Choose whichever one works for you. And as fans, we kind of have to fill in the gap for something that works for us whenever there's these kind of contradicting things. So I think at the end of the day, maybe we shouldn't be so tight about canon and what is and isn't canon. And if you want to believe that there's other people that, I mean, Star Wars is not afraid of saying like, hey, this other person was at Endor and this person was at Endor, and frankly, we now have like just about everybody at Endor now. You don't see them in Return of the Jedi, but you can think in your head, okay, they're in the forest over here, they're doing this and that, they're having these grand adventures elsewhere because it's such a big climactic event. How can it only be confined to just the points of views of these three main characters going through this thing? Um, so I think it's just it's an interesting conversation. That's ultimately what it comes down to, is that I'm sad for the people that it ruins their enjoyment of those things, and I don't want to take away their pain because it's real and they connected to that story and and made them feel seen, or they just connected with it so well and it meant a lot to them then, and I hope that it still continues to mean something to them in some way. But I think I hear their side of things too, where they're like, Just why touch it?" So I
What to
at the end of the
you
day, I'm just
what
caught.
what to you is the difference that is maybe the most egregious or most problematic?
Well, differences of that are most egregious or problematic, but that's when having a full list in front of me. I will say definitely probably removing a character of representation, because that could have been a
Yeah.
big win, right? I'm not so concerned about, like, was it light time? Was it dark? Was it nighttime when the story happens in one case or the other, right? But once characters are taken out, like that's one that I'm like, you knew there were going to be a controversial problem when it comes to this type of thing here, um, and with that, like, just kind of, you guys could have done a little bit more homework on that one, or at least figured out a way to incorporate that into the mix here versus taking someone out that
Mhm.
could have sparked a conversation that maybe you weren't prepared for or something like that. But you got a conversation you probably weren't prepared for by not doing that. So I think ultimately land on the right side of things. They knew it was right and they didn't do that in this case. So you know, that's kind of where I land on that one there. It's hard to say without ultimately looking at the most egregious ones.
One thing you could make use to make peace with it, again, if this is gonna help somebody, I'll say it, but because, from what I remember of the novel, there are there are 2 different places that Ahsoka seeks refuge in and then leaves, right? Like, it's like that's like a
Hmm.
pattern that they establish, and then if you pair that with her Clone Wars episodes with the Martez sisters, it kind of establishes that she did this kind of start over and then flee when trouble showed up many times. And so in theory,
Yeah.
if it makes it better, you could just think of the novel as another instance of that. I know there's so many similarities that people were like, there's no way this isn't like
Hmm.
an adaptation of the novel as opposed to like a separate story. But if that makes it all of a whole thing, then that could help. I don't know.
Yes, and that's
I'm
like
grasping
the
at straws
counseling
here,
of it
but
all, right?
yeah,
We're all just trying to like make things work for us, and that's ultimately what canon is at the end of the day, right? Is it a story that I believe in that gets me the themes that I am trying to pull out of it? Then absolutely, yes. Does it match the character? I hope so, right?
yeah.
And ultimately that's where I land on it. But it does add
And
to this like, oh, these
and
big questions at the end of the day.
I will say because of you, I am gonna finish the novel because I have it. Like I have it
Oh,
still. I
wonderful,
just
wonderful. I was gonna say if I assumed you had the books as you were saying that you had read it or were trying to read it at one point. I I'm 100% sure, so I'm not even gonna say I believe. The audiobook is also, narrated by Ashley Eckstein, so if you wanted to actually hear Ahsoka read
Oh,
you
okay.
Ahsoka, if that would have helped get over the finish line,
That would have.
that also could have been, a way to continue the conversation on that one. E.K. Johnson's great, so I think that'd be, a wonderful story to continue the Ahsoka tales and all that. Also in that third episode, we got the confirmation of canon, and there's a canon confirmation for that. She's at Padme's funeral, which I think is a neat, interesting bit there. Again, talk about Lucasfilm just saying, "Hey, there's another character in the background here that you never thought of." So when you're watching Revenge of Sith, you can think, "Hey, there's someone else in the corner over there lurking around," and it was Ahsoka. Maybe at her um, should have been most hidden in the world, but chose to be in arguably one of the most busiest places. But Jedi can sleuth their way in and out of things as she does, which I'm glad that she does.
Yeah, and
All
I
right,
think that's,
Jen.
I mean, that her legacy as a character in the sort of meta narrative of Star Wars is as that canon character in the shadows, right? That she has to kind of slip
Yes,
in and out of the shadows of the pre-existing canon of the trilogies that so I think it's fitting
that's
that
right.
she's
I
doing it.
agree. So if this Tales series continues, what character would you like to see covered and why?
So I don't know if you actually knew this when you asked me to come on this episode, but Ahsoka is my favorite Star Wars character. My
I did not. I
second favorite. Okay.
took a stab there and said,
Yeah.
let's see if she
Yeah.
likes her
Your
or not.
Spidey sense just knew. Um so my second favorite character is a much more minor character, and that is Admiral Akbar. So
Okay. All
yeah.
right.
Just go with it, okay? Um and so I always felt like, because we did see him somewhat in the Clone Wars, right there, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
Mon Calamari arc that I really like in the Clone Wars, but it's not focused on Akbar. It's focused on the prince, right? Um,
Yes.
and and so I would just love to see Akbar. Like, one of the things I love about the set of Ahsoka episodes is that it's unlike many of the other tales of stories we've gotten or strings of episodes we've gotten. They don't go back to back chronologically. Like, they're
Mm-hmm.
not like a
Mm-hmm.
continuation more or less of the same story. They're hopping in and out of different phases of Ahsoka's life. And that's what I would want for Akbar, because I just want to know more about his backstory, but also see more of him during the Return of the Jedi time.
Mm.
Just give me more Akbar. And that's kind of and I don't think we're getting any Akbar movies or series anytime soon. So I think this is my one shot is these Tales of series.
Maybe Ahsoka season 2, Jen. There's a
Well,
war
yes, but
coming.
I doubt he's gonna be like a major character. You know what I
No,
mean? He's always
yeah, sure. He's probably not going to be at the forefront of things
he's not
in
gonna
the way
have
that
his
you
own
want him to be.
storyline. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not going to have his day in the sun. I don't know how much of a comic book reader you are, but I believe in 2017's Charles Soule's Vader run, there is an arc about the Mon Calamari that includes
Yes.
Akbar a little bit more. So there's
Yes.
some more
I
Akbar in
guess
that, but
maybe I'm just like I'm greedy and I
I
cannot be
think you should
sated.
be greedy though. I think there's a lot more Akbar, and especially when Radis has kind of taken some of the Mon Calamari
Yes.
oomph over the last couple of years when it comes to these awesome admiral characters in the space kind of fleet. Um, he could have easily been in Rogue One, right? But instead, they chose to give it to Admiral Radis instead. Like, what was Akbar thinking at the same time? Like, was he like, "Curse you, Radis, my rival! How dare you!" And then ultimately, Radis has his demise, and he's like, "Well, never mind. I'm glad he wasn't there instead of me."
I mean, I do
um,
think the phasing of the character timeline, the phasing out of the character timeline wise, I think is out of respect for
yes.
the voice actor Eric Bowersfield felt, who I did get to meet at a Star Wars celebration before he passed
Oh,
away. So that was really
awesome.
awesome. And it was he he sort of said like, "Do you want me to say the thing? I'll say the thing." And he was like, "It's a trap. It's a trap." And he said it over and over again like he was in the voice studio, and eventually kind of like faded away and he was like, "It's a goddamn trap." It was, it
Oh,
was so funny. It was great.
you're like, this is what I came
Highlighted
here
highlight
for.
one. Yeah.
Forget everything else at Celebration. This is the highlight
So
trip. This is why I came
I
out.
guess my my question to you is how do we get this made under the Tales of this framework? You know what I mean? Like, is it Tales of?
Oh, it'd be Tales of the Rebellion,
Sure. Okay.
right? Then someone else, some random character in the rebellion, like a Wedge, uh, a hobby, Dak, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
one of these random characters that we need some more of. I think there's something to be said about that. You know, maybe K2 lives. Maybe someone went to Scarif and picked him up, and
Oh,
and
all
that's
right.
how they throw the big cannon thing out there that K2's still around.
I love it.
That'd be cool. Or maybe even you could use Tales of the Rebellion to, if they want to do one kind of wouldn't say major character in Akbar, but then they could say like what was Hera doing during a lot of like some more Hera stories to counteract that. Could be another way to keep that going. So be interesting. Now I gotta ask, because the Akbar of it all, how'd you feel The Last Jedi, seeing um the last of Akbar?
I mean, obviously, it was very upsetting, but again, I understood why they were trying to retire the character. Like, I understood why,
Yeah,
like, why
sure.
why they chose to do that. Was I very sad? Yes.
And
Did
it
I
sounds like
accept
you
it?
were
Yes.
sad
Also,
from
yes.
an accepting place too, right? Versus
Yeah.
those in bad faith fans that I saw over the years that be like, "You can't do this. This is blasphemy." And you're like, "Okay, okay, guys, tamper."
But I think that's again why we need a Tales of set of episodes for him, because I
That's
think
right.
that would let's fix it. Like, you know what I mean? Let's redeem
Justify all
his
sides of
character's
fandom. Yep.
legacy.
Agreed. In that same vein, I will add, I would like to see, and this kind of just feels like low hanging fruit here, but especially after Tales of the Underworld, but Tales from Jabba's Palace, uh, is just right there, and I gotta see if my boy Max Rebo survived the
Oh.
events of Book of Boba Fett, and he already survived uh, Jabba's barge, so I gotta see first off how he did that. I think that'd be an interesting story. Give me a story in between of something that happened at the Garza Flips. I had to quickly remember that.
I haven't
Her
heard that
cantina
name in a
there.
minute.
Haven't. That's right. Bring back some more Book of Boba Fett characters, guys. And then see how he survives the I guess terrorist bombing in a way of of that space, and how he finagles his way out of another incredible situation, and that would be my fun little tales of
do you
continuation
do you
adventures.
want him to see him playing the keyboard with his feet?
Yeah,
Okay.
why
That's
not?
something you want. Okay.
Yeah,
Not everyone feels
absolutely.
that way, so that's why I was asking.
The more the merrier.
Okay.
More
Now you're
more
making me
Max
think
Rebo,
we
the
need
better.
a Tales of the Sarlacc pit, where it's just 3
Oh,
episodes from different periods in the Star Wars timeline, and like who's in the Sarlacc pit. What are they
I
doing?
mean,
Like what?
there were a lot of bodies in that Sarlacc when Bobo was down there.
Yeah. Let's
That
greenlight a
Sarlacc pit.
24 episode series of Tales of the Sarlacc pit.
That's
Let's
right.
bring it back.
Hour long each, well, 40 minutes with commercial
Right.
breaks included. Add in, this is something I wish they would do because everything's switching to a ad tier now, is add in appropriate spots for commercials to take place versus in the middle of a conversation
Mhm.
where I see it happening
Right.
nowadays.
Well, now I'm picturing one of those like 48-hour long YouTube videos where it's just a camera on the Sarlacc pit, and then we see what's happening over.
Yeah, get real avant-garde. Kind of like
Hmm.
what's that movie that what was that, Here? Oh my gosh, what was that movie
Oh,
called with Tom
the
Hanks?
with Tom Hanks,
Yeah, yeah.
Robert Zemeckis. Oh, I
Yes,
did heard
yeah,
that movie was
yeah.
not good. I have not seen it.
You didn't see it? Oh
I
my
didn't see it. Did
gosh.
you see it?
I did not. I thought that would be ripe for the
Okay.
long take review though.
Yeah, and then Greg saw it and was like, "We don't need to cover that movie." So that's that's how that happened.
That's never stopped you guys before.
He's on the front lines, reporting back and being like, let's
He's
not
like,
do it. You
I'll
don't.
take the
I'll
hit."
spare you. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that'd be interesting. Get that kind of format where it's like one camera inside there at various spots, and it's just the Sarlacc over the years. The Sarlacc had feelings, guys, and it was just a person too, living out in the dunes
Yeah.
of Tatooine. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been a blast, Jen, chatting all about Ahsoka and particularly in her Tales of the Jedi experiences here. Um, and thank you for coming on the show to talk about that. And where can the folks find you and the Long Take Review on their podcast feeds?
You can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchockchai, Sopchockchai. And you can find the long take uh, mainly on my Substack, thelongtake.substack.com. But you can also find it wherever you get your podcasts. And we just released our review of The History of Sound, a very small movie, but based on a book that we loved. So that was really fun. And I know I'm in the process of editing. We had another LTR guest episode with Ross Holleben. He wanted to talk about Casablanca, which was really, really fun. And I believe you are next in the queue. So I have to talk to you at some point
Ooh,
about scheduling you. I think
alrighty.
I think the word on the street is that we want to talk about Thin Red Line with you.
Going back to
So
the Second World War again. You guys just can't get out of
yeah, it's
it.
mostly Greg being like, well, I've spent so much time talking about thinking about and talking about World War II movies that now let's
That's
just
right.
keep it
I got
going.
poor Greg to watch a 9-episode TV series to come on the show.
He did mention
So
that more
yeah,
than once to us.
he's definitely he definitely got his chops for that one. But yeah, adding on a 3-hour film about the Battle of Guadalcanal could only, which is actually I don't know if you've seen it or not. Have you, the Thin Red Line, before? I know PT said he
I
has, but
haven't. Yeah, it's
got
one
it.
of those weird blind spots in my movie viewing, so I'm excited
Well, and it was
to
a
watch
blind
it
spot for a
finally.
lot of people in 1998 too, because of course when you come out a few months after Saving Private Ryan, there's only room in town for one
Fair.
epic World War II film.
That's
So
unfortunate timing.
it got, yeah, they couldn't have moved it to next year or anything like that. No, no, but that'll be a fun one to talk about. So very excited to have that conversation one day. And I got the Criterion of it too this past summer.
Ooh.
So to pop that one out and put that in the Blu-ray player will be a fun experience for sure. Because I bet you Terrence Malick's commentary, it'll be super interesting, and we could talk about that later.
Yeah,
But
no,
folks,
for sure.
thank you for listening to this episode, for completing our Tales of the Jedi conversation here. Will we talk about it again in the future? Who knows? Perhaps. There's always something and fun nuggets to dive into with these various shows, shorts that continue to be mined for great content in the future. But you can expect next week in your feeds another great installment where we actually talk about the next thing, Tales of the Empire.